good morning. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Justin, John, and Quindy, and whoever the heck else is hanging around there out in the ether. Hi, everybody. Good morning. No way, Silvertongue. Hi. It's good to see you again. Oh, dear me. What a day. So everybody's just kind of there. All right. That's cool. Being just kind of there is cool. We were just talking about Bones USA yesterday and whether they were a superior product, and I think they are. Let's get our Lysette in focus. Normally she is attached to the hobby holder, but as I have my camera like right here, like right at the edge of my table, it's just not very convenient for what I'm trying to stay on camera. So the hobby holder, very convenient if you are just painting. Not so convenient if you are trying not to slump over so much when you're painting on camera. But yeah. Absalon. Whoa, a wild Absalon appears. Poof! What kind of Pokemon would you be, Absalon? I bet you'd be maybe a dark Pokemon. I don't know. Hi, Lord Nobody. Hello, Inky. We have a lot of people that I haven't seen for a little while here. You don't know what kind of Pokemon you'd be? Usually when I do the whole poof, a wild so-and-so appears, then I ask. Some people know right away what kind of Pokemon they are. You're quirky. I don't know. Quirky Pokemon tend to be fey Pokemon, like fairy Pokemon. Oh, it sounds like you have tight muscles in your neck then, Shadow Raven. That happens to me. I get like tight muscles in my neck and it causes a little bit of a headache. Usually I have to like kind of lay down on the floor. Usually put my legs up on a chair kind of in a L shape. And that sometimes helps. Or I go up against the wall with my legs straight up the wall. That helps a lot. There's a lot of different PT exercises for that actually. It's very common. Especially when people bend over looking at their phones all day or when they're painting. Like, your neck muscles get really tired and they constrict the blood flow, and that's what causes the headache. Good morning, Ben. You're probably a Weedle Silver? I couldn't say exactly what type of Pokemon, or what Pokemon I would be, but I could choose I could probably, if I had to choose, I could choose a classification of Pokemon. Like, alright, let's see here. What am I going to do today? I think I want to work on the green a bit, because in order to work on... Yeah. Because I think, and maybe bringing the yellow into those laces like we talked about doing before. Because I don't think I need a more accent color. I think that would be too much. So yeah, let's work on highlighting our green today. Maybe do some... start a little freehand. I have an idea for a freehand design on that green, but I want to get it highlighted and shaded, at least in a basic way first. So we were using our beautiful friend Wilderness Green for that, which is a lovely, lovely dark green with great coverage. You feel like you're more of a ditto. Yes. That's awesome. Ah, yeah. I see. It annoys me the heck out of me. Like, the minute it happens, Shadow Raven, I'm, like, on the floor doing an exercise because I can't stand having headaches, like, drive me crazy. They make it very hard for me to concentrate. And, so I have zero tolerance for headaches. Let's see, what do we want to highlight with? Maybe we'll use a Pathfinder color and see what happens. Maybe we'll use Alchemical Green. We haven't used that one on stream yet. Bob's probably a Snorlax. Oh, funny. Bob is not nearly like... I mean, Snorlaxes are huge. I suppose Bob could be a Snorlax in hiding, like a Snorlax in Bob's clothing. A surprise Snorlax, a stealth Snorlax. Now that's kind of terrifying, actually. Champion Napper. Yup, that's true. Okay, so he's got the personality traits. And probably something like that electric Eevee. I can't remember. Zap something. Or something. I don't know. I love the Eevees, but I can never remember all their names. Flareon. I don't remember what the electric one is, though. Is it Zappion? But I just feel like I'm spiky like that and electrified and have too much energy most of the time. Champion Napper. Alright, so usually I mix yellow into greens to highlight them, but today we're going to experiment. We're going to use our alchemical green instead, because I've had this color in my drawer for a while, and it has a fair amount of yellow in it and a little bit of white in it. Here's the degree of difference in them. When you're mixing highlights, you do want to choose like a color that's actually fairly different. And you want to identify what direction you want your highlight to go in. So with this green, I do want to keep it pretty warm, but I don't necessarily want to load a bunch of yellow into it because I don't want it to get too close to our yellow dress. So... Jolteon, yeah! I feel like maybe I'd be a Jolteon. I'm either a fire or an electric, I think. I have too much energy to be anything otherwise. Alrighty. Let us mix that up and see what it looks like. You can't, he's asleep, ha 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 ha. I played Pokemon Go a lot. Every once in a while I go back to Pokemon Go. Like, I usually give it like a year. When the pandemic was going on, I went back to it pretty hardcore after I moved out here because it encouraged me to walk and explore my surroundings. Then I fell out of it again. Because sometimes it's like, it depends on my motivation, because when I walk, my motivation to walk is usually to listen to my audiobooks. And I don't listen to my audiobooks except when I do my walk, which is called, I think, temptation bundling. And it's really effective. So if you combine, you know, your chore, which is walking, with something that you actually enjoy, like listening to audiobooks or playing Pokemon Go, it works. It makes you more likely to exercise. All right, so what we've done is we mix that up, and we've gotten a very opaque green highlight here. And part of that is that there's a lot of white in alchemical green to give it coverage. So it's not as bright, but I don't necessarily want it to be bright. I do want it a little lighter, though. So I'm going to add another drop of this alchemical green. Wilderness has a lot of pigment in it to give it that good coverage, so I'm not surprised that I need to add a little bit more of my light color to overwhelm that pigment. We'll start there. We'll see how that goes. We'll get our Lysette tag out of the way, and then we'll get our... You can see... So this is like... To go back to something I've touched on before in various videos and et al., we want to kind of look at what our grayscale is when we're mixing highlights. So first we look at our base color, and our base color, if we kind of put our thing up against it, you can see how it's a value 8. Like, if you look at it, you want to look at the edge here where it overlaps, and when you can see a big difference, like on this 7, you know it's not a 7. When I put this dark edge up against it, I can see the paint behind it is lighter. And when I put an 8 up, it pretty much disappears. So it's an 8, definitely. So if this is an 8, that means we want to go up 1.5 to 2 steps usually. So we should aim around a 7.5 to a 6, which is just about perfect. It's mostly a 6. You can see that the 7 is noticeably darker, and that the 6 is about right. It's maybe a tiny bit lighter, but that means it's mostly a 6. So that is perfect. That's exactly within the range you want for your highlight. Great. Using the grayscale when you're figuring out your highlights can help you a lot if you're new to mixing or not very confident with it. No, I'm teaching you about grayscale. It's not color theory at all. This is not color theory at all. This is simple, like, if you want to mix effective highlights, make sure that they're 2 steps higher or lower on your grayscale. It's, like, ridiculously easy. Oh, yeah. Is Sergio? I would have expected him to get commissioned for that one or to work on it because he liked it. I mean, it is a beautiful bust. I expect his style will be very different from what I'm doing. So now I'm going to test this. I'm going to see, because I did thin this color a little bit. I'm going to use it to do some highlights and to see how it comes out. And it's hard to see it when you put it up against the yellow on these little tabs, but that's to be expected. And you actually don't want it to get too close to the yellow, or these little tabs will kind of disappear into the yellow. It's commission. Honestly, Silver, the way to do it is just to sit down to paint. I mean, you don't even have to paint along or study along with me. What I would advise, if you find your painting time is really limited, actually, is to just pick a model that you want to paint. Think about what you're exactly trying to do. Like, are you going to be working on the skin? Are you going to be trying to paint a black cloak or whatever? Then use the keywords in my Patreon to search for exactly the video you need. It's a much more targeted approach to using the Patreon. It's just as effective as just sitting and watching, and honestly, you'll get more done. Anything that when you put a big general goal in front of yourself, like watch videos on the Patreon, you tend to like just not do it because it's not really an actionable thing, right? You need to start somewhere. So I strongly advise tackling the Patreon like that if you feel overwhelmed by the content. Just, paint something, and whatever you're doing on that something, search and see if there's a keyword. Like painting blue, or painting skin, or painting hair, or just hair or skin. Yeah, I think it's skin tones is just a keyword. I'm really good about tagging every single one of my lessons. The one thing I'm not so good about tagging these days is painting big or painting little, because I usually have enough tags that are much more specific. And let's face it, a lot of the techniques you're using on bigger models, you're also using on smaller models. So I'm bringing up this green, as you can see it. I've covered a lot of my base dark surface, and the green has come up quite a bit. So I'll have to see how I like that up here, because the green is supposed to be fairly dark, so I don't want to raise it too much, and I might need to go back in with my wilderness. At the same time, because I went with this very dark leather, I don't have to keep my green as dark because it's not the darkest thing on the model anymore. Yeah, and I will give you a piece of advice though. At least it's true for me. It may not be true for everybody, but when I am working on a figure like this, I will avoid like the plague going to see what any other painter is doing on it. If I go over and start to compare my paint job to Sergio or Luca, I'm probably gonna get, it's going to skew my ideas, or it's going to make me disheartened, or it's going to, be like, oh, he did that and I should have done that, Oh, he did the XYZ better than I did, like that sort of thing. That happens even to top level painters. And it's so important not to get discouraged. So it's like, if you're looking for inspiration, looking for how other people have painted it is a great idea. But the minute you start it, I recommend that you stop looking at other people's paint jobs. Because you will be it is in the human nature to compare ourselves to others, and it's too easy to get discouraged. So for your own sanity and joy of painting, I do recommend that. That, of course, is totally taken, that right advice is totally taken off the table if you have decided to try to paint a model to be a duplicate of somebody else's. Like, you decide you really love Sergio's take on some model, and so you buy that model and you get really high quality pictures of Sergio's version, and you try to essentially copy what he's done. That is a very valid learning tool, and then you do want to be looking very closely at what he's done to try to get as close as you can. That can be a great learning tool. But otherwise, when you're painting for enjoyment and not to try to, improve or to figure out the style of your painting idol, I find that it is very discouraging to look at other people's stuff. So now that I know those people are painting those things, I will avoid looking at any of their stuff until I am done with mine. That's why I don't look, Twisted Oma. You can say don't second guess yourself all day. Humans will do it. You know, you could try to force yourself not to, but you'll still have the inclination to do so. Unless you're very, very set on what you want to do, very, very confident of it. I find it much easier to just avoid looking at their stuff. Especially as I'm not a big social media person anyway, so it's very easy for me to avoid looking at it. But this is me just trying to remove the problem before you even get to the point where you have to fight yourself against second guessing. Because if it's gotten that far, then you're in trouble. So yeah, obviously if you hit a spot where you're not sure if that's a belt pouch or a piece of ornamentation, then yeah, you got to look at other people's stuff. But even then, I'm more likely to go look at the model in the company's store and not look at the paint job necessarily on it. Or since I'll have already seen the paint job on it in the store on the box art, I'll, be fine to look at that. But I won't look at like, Kirill's take on X or Ben Comet's take on X or Luca's take on X or whatever. Because I just don't want to go there. I want to be able to enjoy my paint job and to do it to the best of my ability without doubting and without wanting to change it and without getting discouraged about it. And the best way to do that, I think, is to just avoid the temptation. Do I have an Instagram? Yeah, but it's very, very seldom used. I've been putting up, I think I put up a work in progress of the Templar not long ago. But I'm not a big Instagrammer. That's my one fault in the world of Patreoning, is that I'm not a compulsive social media person. And most of the time that's because I've got a lot of other things I'm working on. And I haven't made it a daily habit. It's on my list of daily habits to develop, but like, there were other daily habits that were far more important. Like taking my walk after lunch every day. The other thing about doing Instagram is that you always have to have something to do. I mean, doing social media takes a lot of time. And if you don't necessarily spend a lot of time on social media, finding the time to look at social media can be a challenge. But it is best practices when you are doing what I'm doing and developing Patreon and stuff like that. So I do acknowledge it. I am just working on it. Hey, thanks. Thanks, Carrie Michael Cosby, for that Prime sub. Happy sub-anniversary. Happy sub-anniversary. Happy sub-anniversary. Happy sub-anniversary. There you go. Pretty flat. But I'm not I'm not very practiced in the voice these days. My voice is definitely rusty. When I drove to Reaper every morning, I was singing in the car, but now I don't drive anywhere because I've been living in this apartment for like a year and a half. I'm not going anywhere, so I don't have much time to sing in the car. My voice gets rusty. Yeah, it's hard to build a habit around every 2 to 3 days. That's I think my problem with social media. It's like I'd have to do it once a week, or I'd have to try to do it on days that made sense in my head. When you're trying to develop a habit, you really need to make it like easy, accessible, memorable, all those things. So it's like you have to figure out like how to mind game yourself so that you'll remember it. So I'm just building up this highlight a little bit on areas to add a little bit of volume and texture. As you can see, it doesn't take much to just add some life and dimension to this dark green. On the cuffs, which are kind of vertical to the sky, I'm going to mostly highlight the tops, but also highlight the edge as it goes down. Yeah, we're doing a bit of an analogous color scheme on this one, buddy. It's different. Usually I'm very much in favor of complementary colors. Oh, hey guys. Speaking of that, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, this one I decided to go analogous on just because it's something I hadn't done on stream. And since we wanted to make her a wood elf, we just we went that way. So yeah, I think she's coming along very nicely. I'm starting to like her a lot more now that I've got that complementary color, or that accent color, not complement. But actually what I wanted to talk about is this blue violet and where it fits, because I was looking at my color wheel the other night and I realized where it fits. that it is part of a thing, a scheme, and that I could show you guys that. So let's do that. A lot of things about me are weak, Absalon. A lot. That's why I listen to all these self-improvement books. Alright, so remember we were looking at this about color schemes, right? And we were looking at all the different ways on the color wheel that you can use these little triangles and things like this, and the rectangles and squares. So this is actually a triadic color scheme, guys. It actually is. Because if you take the big triangle, so the one that goes, the triad here, and you point this one to yellow-green, then you go over here and you find that another one is, another point of the triangle is actually blue-violet. So we have blue-violet and yellow-green. Yellow and green. Both with blue-violet. So it's actually a triad. If we were doing the entire triad, the other side is red-orange, which I could actually sneakily put in here if I were to highlight my leather with it. So then it would be a pure triadic color scheme. It would be an off color scheme. It would be like a triad that you don't usually see because it's made of all the different kind of splits. The split colors, the weird in-between colors that nobody knows. So yeah, so if we wanted to, we could, because remember browns are a muted orange, if we wanted to throw that in there, we could actually end up with a triadic color scheme, just like red, yellow, blue, and green, orange, purple, only using yellow, green, and blue, violet, and orange, red. So always kind of look at when you're developing your color scheme, if you're not sure where it lands, just kind of go and look at the color wheel there and see if you can figure it out, because it might give you an answer if you're looking for another color to use on your figure. If you realize that actually you've inadvertently painted a triadic scheme, then all you have to do is look at the other point of the triangle and it gives you a suggestion for a color you should use. Then you just have to figure out which version of that to use. For instance, a muted red-orange would actually be like ruddy leather. So if we used ruddy leather to highlight the leather here, we would hit the triadic color scheme. That's why I keep it right on my desk here. It doesn't get lost that way. It is a small, flat thing, and thus prone to being buried. We're just going to finish kind of setting out this green. I do want to go up one more level with this green as well, which I will do in just a moment. I just want to make sure I've got all of it. I'm going to keep the highlight on the cuff more toward the top of the arm, both because that's where light would be falling, and also because I need some shadow around these little buttons for them to show out, these little studs for them to show up very well. Oops, people are starting things outside of my window, so if I hear beeping or any loud noises, I'll have to close it. But it is, we're in the middle of a heat wave here. Haha, Texas goes, that's no heat wave. It was 90 yesterday, and I think it's supposed to get to 93 today, so it's actually quite warm this morning for Northern California, South Bay. Quite toasty. $110 week, yeah. Yeah, I used to sing all the time. I was in choir when I was choir and did musicals and all sorts of things when I was in high school. So my voice was in really good shape while I was doing that. I had a very, very good voice. My music director wanted me to go into music. But I was like, there is even less, career opportunities in music with a music degree than there are for art. And I did not do it. I also couldn't see myself really doing that. I loved art more than I loved voice. when I was little, I wanted to sing like Julie Andrews. So I am a little sad that my voice has kind of gone to pot, and I have thought about, over the past several years, I have thought about taking voice lessons just to get it back in shape. Because I enjoy singing, and I enjoy having my voice in shape. But that's like money and, you know, budgeting and stuff like that. So not right now. So first I'm going to paint this entire surface, even though it has runes on it, and we're going to be bringing those runes up and out. In other ways, I want to make sure that my highlights and shading are good. Overall, it's much easier to do a highlight just along the top edge of the scabbard before you paint the runes. Afterwards, it's pretty much impossible without tearing your hair out, so always make it easier on yourself, guys. When you can. $117. Oh yeah, green users are in Arizona. It is dry. I've been singing along to things since I was very small, Carrie, so I think that's how I got a decent sense of tune. I still can't read sheet music, but I'm very good at memorizing songs, so that always carried me through. Yeah, I could do scales, but there's nowhere here for me to sing to them. Like, I'm not going to start singing in the apartment because it would bug the bleep out of David. And our neighbors. Plus, for me to sing full voice, my voice carries. I have a very powerful voice. That's all you can hear me talking across the room at ReaperCon. So, singing here in my apartment, not going to happen. Oh, Bob and Julie are old hands at hot and dry Twistedoma. I think you've been in Arizona for a long time, haven't you, Julie? I'm sure that they know to stay hydrated and stay inside. Me, on the other hand, I'm going for my walk right after this. That's what I did yesterday. It was quite toasty. But better than waiting. Like, I could wait to the evening, but I usually take a short evening walk too, so I don't want to take just one walk. Though it was really nice yesterday evening to walk. It was like 79 degrees. It was beautiful. It's been drier here too, so it's too darn nice out. 21 years. Oh, wow. So Bob has even been there longer. Dang. Bob is a hardcore Arizonan. I didn't know. I'm impressed. I really love Arizona. It was one of the states where if I had moved away and not had David, I would thought about moving to Arizona because I think it's just a beautiful state. It's got so much variety in its natural environment. And also my parents have a house there that they winter in, so it would have been good to be around family. But then I met this guy. Well, okay, I met the guy a while ago, but then I got interested in this guy. And now I'm here. I'm going to go a little later. No, it's way early for stretch time. This is way early for stretch time. Since it's not a 2-hour stream. And I started, I started about a half an hour ago, so way too early. I like to stretch a little bit further in. That way, closer to the end than the beginning, ideally. That way it kind of refreshes me for the last bit when I'm feeling tired. Alrighty, and then I just need to get that cuff, and then we can do one more, and then I think I'm going to map in some freehand on the dress interior. We also still haven't even highlighted the back of the yellow here, so I probably should do that at some point, but we've got a ways to go on this mini. We're about halfway done with her, I want to say. I started like 8 minutes late or something. Yeah, I start at 11:30. And usually I stretch at 12:40. But I'm doing fine on remembering it, guys. And honestly, if I don't remember it, my body is like happy and I don't have to worry about it. So unless you yourself are trying to schedule your stretch time, then by all means, stretch whenever. My throat is starting to go, so I think there's something in the air. I'm going to close the window. Be right back. Just don't want the world to attack me. And sometimes California does like to attack me that way. Sorry, plants. Closing the window. There we go. Oh, There we go. Back. And I need a drink because my throat is itchy. Alrighty. Darn you, allergies. Alright, I want one more highlight. I think I'm going to go up to almost pure alchemical green. But I am going to put a bit of my previous mix into it, and this is how I tend to build highlights. When nature wants to kill you, yes. And I do allergy meds, but here in Cali, it's like, usually the state is perfectly fine with me, and I'm fine with the state. But every once in a while, there's something out there that really gets my allergies going. I don't know what it is. Haven't been able to really isolate it. Alright, so we're going to take a brush full of our previous mix and put it into our new highlight color. That's going to bring these closer together, and it's going to make sure that a bit of this is mixed into this. Means that these will work better as highlight and shadow, or highlight and midtone. You still want them to be different enough. And this is a little bit too bright, so I think I'm going to take a little bit more of that wilderness and mix it in. Maybe even a little bit more than that. I want them to be like different, but I don't want them to be too different, or they won't mix. They won't work with each other as well. That looks good. Not when I'm highlighting and shading, Farwood. When you're highlighting one color with another, you want it to be as harmonious together as you can, unless you're doing a weird, like, iridescent effect or something, or a colored lighting effect. But in general, you want, if you're highlighting a color with another, I always mix a little bit of the previous one into the new one. Always. 100%. When I'm shading, sometimes I make an exception, because if I'm trying to shade with, say, if I'm shading green with purple, I'm going to get a better effect if I just thin down the purple a lot and apply it in the shadows. But when I'm highlighting, I'm always mixing a little bit. What that does is it covers your butt when you're using, say you're just trying to highlight blue. And instead of really picking a triad, you just kind of grabbed random lighter and darker blues off the rack. So mixing a little bit of your previous layer into your new highlight will cover your butt if you chose colors that weren't very compatible. Because there are blues that are kind of violet, and there are blues that are kind of green, and there are blues that are kind of gray. So sometimes these things will not highlight each other well. So if you mix a little bit of your previous color in, then it helps. It still won't save you if you've truly made bad decisions, but it'll make it better. Well, except we're not talking about picking colors, though, Absalom. We're talking about picking highlights for your colors. And so fashion sense doesn't apply in that case, good or bad. It's, you know, your red, when light hits it, is going to shift toward orangish or pinkish. That's just the way it is. And if you want that to look right, so you can have the most kaleidoscopic tie-dye lich in the world, but if you want it to look correct, like the light is hitting it, then you need to pay attention to this. So I'm just going to make really small highlights now, really tiny, to make all the little details show up. Did you pick up the Betty Edwards one that I always recommend, Farwood, or did you get a different one? Yes, I have a friend, a long time ago I had a friend out in Baltimore when I was living out there, and she painted a tie-dyed lich because she wanted to. And it was fabulous. If you want to make everybody in your D&D group, like, really wonder exactly who that lich used to be in real life, when they were alive, paint them in interesting colors. But yeah, no matter how bad your fashion sense, the way that light falls on the colors that you choose isn't changing. So, yep, that's the one to use, Farwood. And you can even, I bet you can even do a lot of her exercises on miniatures. Like, you'd have to, like, think about how to adapt them. I do need to bring out my lining color, though. I need to touch up. I've gotten a little bit rough in some of these areas. So where is my walnut? There it is. Yeah, Color and Light, I would say, is more advanced. It's really inspiring because James Gurney explains things really well. And his paintings are amazing. But I would say Betty is going to give you, essentially, she's going to talk to you about, like, just the basics. Things that I even taught. I talk about a lot of the stuff that she first taught me in that book on this stream all the time. Like, when I talk about the fact that the more area a color takes up makes it look brighter, more saturated, you see the color more. Whereas if you're painting a very small area, the color needs to be more vivid or it won't show up. So that stuff, that's from Betty Edwards' book. And that's all extremely applicable to miniature painting. So I would say do Betty's book first and then augment with James's work in Color and Light. And James has got a lot of really, like, I just think he's a little more advanced. So you may not really grok some of the things he has to say or why they work, unless you start out with a basic understanding. Yeah, when you want them to transition well, mix a little bit of the previous into the new layer. And that works best if you do have a fair amount of difference. Like I said, usually it's 1.5 steps to 2 steps on the grayscale between my colors. And then you can do that very easily. I'm gonna get my lining color in here, guys, so that I can touch up a little bit of my lining and divisions on this color. I'm gonna take walnut and do it 2-to-1. Yeah, I'm a moderate Heinlein fan. Some of his books I really like Cat Who Walks Through Walls, and sometimes he gets a bit preachy for me. But grok's a good word. And he's, yeah, there's things about Heinlein, but yes, grok is a good word. Alright, so there's some areas in here on the bodice where I lost a bit of my lining. Likewise, up against that buckle. May have gone a little far there. Yeah, pentads, like I was talking about the other day, like I did on my Patreon recently as a little feature on pentads, where I feel like Master Series actually works better in pentads than in triads. Yep, not an uncommon view. I am not a big fan of, like, military sci-fi, so I never read Starship Troopers, even though I like other books of Heinlein's. I did make an exception for Old Man's War by John Scalzi, which is also a great book by a more modern author. And I also made an exception for the Honor Harrington series, but that's because the hero is female. Which, you don't get much military sci-fi with a female protagonist. Alrighty, so we've got a little bit of lining touch up here, just to bring things out, and I do need to do the gold and silver still on this model, or gold and steel and silver. But there are times when I just notice my lining is mucky, and I'm just like, arg. I like to get nice, sharp differentiation. Although it's difficult when you're going up against a light color like this, it's easy to get a little messy. I lost interest way before that, just because the story just started going downhill. When you've got a writer where people love the world and they just want them to keep writing, and their publisher just wants them to keep writing, they inevitably hit the end of their mental story arc and have to start just doing stuff, and sometimes it's just not good. So I think I'd like the first 5 or 6 Honor Harringtons. There is, like, one series that, like, where she hasn't jumped the shark yet. And every time I think she's going to jump the shark, she manages to avoid it because she's an amazing writer, and that's C.J. Cherry's Foreigner series. Like, I keep picking up the new books, and I keep expecting them to be, like, boring or, like, not really work with everything that's gone before. But, like, nope, I keep liking them. Even though she's not for everybody, because she's definitely, like, goes on and is terribly psychological, but I love her characters, so I stick in with it. But, you know, she's also a Hugo Award winner, so she knows her craft. My favorite sci-fi writer, actually. Yeah, but that makes me not want to read it, Pendrake. It's like, you understand something. I'm female, and I like books with strong female protagonists and characters, and Heinlein doesn't do that. And so I just don't feel like I need to read Starship Troopers, because not only do I not like military sci-fi, unless it's got, you know, something in it that I can grab onto myself and relate to, but I find that his female characters inevitably leave me cold. It's a historic book, and maybe someday I'll read it just for the experience of having said I've read it. But, yeah, there are many things like that keeping me from picking up Starship Troopers. That, and I've got so many wonderful books I haven't read already that I actually want to read. Ah, interesting. Yeah, Weber does seem to like, he at least likes the strong female characters, so. But yeah, that's one of the reasons that even though I do like some of Heinlein's books, and sometimes I even go back and reread them, it's just like, it's the cultural bias of the day, you know? I mean, and if you can read it, it's interesting because, like, there are some writers from a long time ago that definitely had cultural bias that is not politically correct today, and I can manage them, but as a female, I notice it's like I can see how some minority groups would get really, really upset at some period work that is really anti-whatever, because it appeals directly to them or is against them. So for me, I lose interest if a book's female characters aren't well drawn, and I get annoyed at them. Wheel of Time, yeah. I would need to go and just read the Brandon Sanderson ones. I read up to book 8 and I stopped. Alright, let's see, where are we? Lining is finished. I want to do my green highlights back up on here. And I need to do my green highlights down here. Yeah, I stopped Wheel of Time. Jordan at least made his women powerful and, like, you know, independent-minded, but they all feel the same. They all feel like the same character, with different hair color and different cultures applied. Yeah, Shadow Raven, have fun. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of, I mean, they're a product, all of these writers from long ago, they're a product of their time, right? So you always kind of try to give them benefit of the doubt, but that doesn't mean that if you are black or gay or female or whatever, that you have to enjoy reading that, right? And if you choose to read other things that don't treat you like that, then I can't blame you, because I do the same thing. I mean, I'm reading a series of mysteries that were written, gosh, I think he wrote them in the 30s? Like, but they're it's period, it's old Australian outback in, like, the 1920s, I think? And oh my gosh, are they, like, there's some beautiful period details in them, but culturally, they're so, like, not good. Just like, but that's how things were, right? So you have to, it's like reading Twain. It's like, you hate how some cultures and characters are depicted, but that's how they were viewed by whoever was writing about them at the time. So it's a hard call, right? Like, you need those books to stay out there because it tells us how far we've come, but if you're in one of those minorities and you really get upset at those books, I don't blame you for not liking them or reading them. Anyway, we're a little bit too close to the, like, you know, like politics here, so we shall move on to painting. I'm going to do a really light highlight here, just a little bit. I don't think so. I don't think, you can't change it, Pet Mathophile. Like, you may not like it, and it may not be in line with our morals today. But anyway, we gotta get off this topic, so we're gonna forcefully get off this topic and talk about painting. Bottom line, read what you like from authors you adore, no matter when they wrote it. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're doing a very small pale highlight here. It's funny how books lead to talk of books can lead to talk of, like, you know, deep cultural stuff, which is cool, right? I mean, it's cool to talk about this stuff from time to time. But, so actually, since we're on the topic, are there any new authors that you guys have encountered recently that you really like in science fiction and fantasy? While I'm highlighting the screen with tiny touches of lighter green. See, just a little touch here along this edge and then a little bit back here because I'm picking out those folds. So any new authors, guys, that you've run into in sci-fi and fantasy that you really like? Relatively new. So, like, say last 5 to 10 years. I'm always looking for new reading material. There. Just a little touch of that lighter green, because we don't want to change the color of this area. Oh, you read horror. Oh, that's really cool, Quindy. I used to read a ton of horror. I love Stephen King. Stephen King was one of my favorite writers ever when I was in high school. I used to read a lot of it, and then I just kind of like drifted more into fantasy as the years went on. But there was some great dark fantasy horror out there. But yeah, so when you're highlighting, remember to keep your highlights smaller if you want the area to still look relatively dark. So if we want to keep this green relatively dark, we need to make sure that we don't put too many highlights on this area. We want to keep it dark compared to other things on the model. Who was that? Oh, Mercedes Lackey. She's old school, though. No new writers. You guys aren't out there reading new people, huh? I find this interesting as a prospective new writer myself. I mean, I do know that people go back. Like, you know, you tend to go back to your favorite authors. I'm going to do just a tiny highlight here. Tiny highlight up on top of this cuff. Once again, we want to keep our green dark, so our highlights need to stay tiny. Stay tiny. Tiny. Tiny highlights. More romance, Farwood. Was it good, though, or was it just campy? Like, there are fantasy romances, and there are fantasy romances, and I like them heavier on the fantasy than on the romance. I mean, I will read graphic novels, because I own all of Sandman. Joe Abercrombie, okay. And yeah, he's older. J Sharp, what kind of books? Like, what's genre specific? Okay, Violet. Thanks, guys. I'm always looking. Lately, I've been trying to read a lot of. I've been transitioning more toward fantasy, so I'll look into those, Julie. Thanks. I mean, after hearing me hold forth, you guys kind of know what I like, so. And I like series fiction because I like to get to know my characters. Oh, cool. Neat, Lord Nobody, thanks. J Sharp, alright. Making a note. I read to relax in the evenings a lot when I'm doing my stretches. Oh yeah, Anthony Bourdain. I'm familiar with him. Cool. Read books, bottom line. So when you have a part of the model that's very close to another in shade, which is relative light or dark. Like our skin and our dark green are very close to each other now as far as their relative shades. So like on the gray scale, they're very close to each other. The way to get around that is to use your lining and your edge highlighting to separate those two things. So we want to make sure that we've got a strong dark line between the skin and the bracer. Don't want to make it super thick. You just want to make sure it's there. You know, so you've got that dark line. And then bring in this light green and do a highlight line right there, which is effective because the bracer is pointed upwards. So we can take our lighter green and just do a little bit of an edge there on the cuff. And what we're essentially doing with this is you're putting a very dark and a lighter color on that edge, and that separates, see how that separates the hand better from the cuff. So that's a sneaky thing to do if you find that your colors are blending into each other. The way to do that behind the leg would be to introduce an even darker shadow, like would be to grab my walnut and actually put a dark shadow behind the leg, which I likely will do. Oh, interesting. Let me write down that S.L. Huang. I'm not familiar, but I love fairy tales, so... Fairy tale fiction is what I love. I wouldn't do a wash for that Eat to Surf because if you do a wash, you're going to bury all this great stuff that you did here. Whereas if you just paint it in, like you still would thin it to a wash consistency, so let's just do that now. Grab a little bit of a brush full. You don't need very much paint. Thin it down to where it's kind of like a wash. Probably be like a heavy wash because I'm putting it over a dark green. And then what you do is you just kind of paint it into that back section. So I'm going to move the model around so I can get at it a little easier. Pick up a little bit of that stuff on my, and it's just a little on my brush. It's not like a huge amount of wash would be. And then you kind of brush it up just in the areas you want it. Like, so just in that area behind the leg. See where I put it? See that dark shadow? And then take some water or a little bit of your green and just kind of feather that edge in. Since it's dark and the green is dark, it won't leave much of a watermark. But I can take my wilderness green, which is my shadow right now, and paint it over that area to make sure that it blends in. Just paint it over the edge. If you can see an edge, just paint, take a little bit of your base coat and paint it over that edge, and you'll be fine. And that gives you a much darker shadow there behind the leg. You can see it, see how it's wet. And then the leg stands out. So it's just, I mean, layering is just targeted washes. Like when you use layering to do your shadows, you're painting with a wash consistency, but you're just using a little bit on your brush and you're putting it exactly where you want it instead of putting it all over everything and then having to do touch-ups. When I used to do washes, I found that they didn't save me time because the amount of touch-up I had to go back and do afterwards was annoying. So since I had to go and bring everything else back up in order to keep going on with my highlighting. So for me, I just started painting in my shadows and found that I got more mileage out of it and I could paint a little faster. It depends. Some people really find a lot of benefit out of quick washes, and it just is ask yourself, is it really saving you time? And if it is, great. And if it's not, think about doing it this way. D&D manuals for fun is fine. I used to do that as a kid all the time. I kind of held off. I started Wise Man's Sphere, but I decided to wait. I mean, Patrick is going to take a long time to finish this series because he's done such a good job already that there's a lot of pressure on him to deliver with a really, really good book, this last one. I have a lot of sympathy for writers like that, where they've got this fantastic series going, and what's really happening in their heads is that, oh my god, I have to really knock it out of the park with this next book, because everybody is expecting that, and they'll be horribly disappointed if I don't deliver. And writing a very good book takes time. Lots of time. It's probably a little easier for people like Germ and Pat, who have experience with it, than it is for somebody like me, who is still learning the craft. But yeah, I have faith. Yeah, when I read Pat's introduction, like little dedication to in the beginning of Name of the Wind, where he pretty much was like, my dad always told me that if I was going to do anything, like I needed to do it right. And so that was how he wrote the first book, was essentially he worked on it and worked on it and worked on it until he felt it was absolutely the best thing he could do. And it took a very long time. But he was satisfied with the result. And so when you get an author like that, the nice thing is that you can be sure that when the book comes out, it will be high quality. And the bad thing is you probably have to wait a long time for it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. He's a wonderful writer. Oh, cool. Well, then I'll probably like it. Thanks for that credit then for the SL Huang. I think an A at that point is an ah sound. I'm getting a little bit better at Chinese pronunciations, but not great at them. So if I mutilate anybody's name or author name, I apologize. All right, just doing a little bit of a light green highlight here. And a little bit back on her cuff here. And then we'll do a stretch break. Because I think it's about time. Yeah, it's perfect. Haha, my gut told me it was time for a stretch break, and it was. My gut can learn. I think what I might do, I was thinking about what I wanted to do on these runes back here. Whether I wanted to go silver. I think I might want to go silver on them. Yeah, it's a hard call. I thought about just highlighting them up with a yellow or a lighter green too, just to say as if they're raised, like carved, but I still haven't decided on that. I'll probably let it go. That's the one thing I don't like about this model is the embossed runes. Even though it was on the original sword, I just feel like they're difficult to figure out how to paint. We're going to put her down, and I'm going to do my stretches. Hold on, I'll refocus so you guys can see her clearly while we do that. We'll kind of balance her up on her... There we go. There we are. Sweet. Well, thanks for the recommendations, guys, on all those books. I will go look up those writers. Oof, stretching. Oh, yeah, the spine needed a stretch. Oh, hey, I forgot to tell you guys. Monday is my birthday, so I'm going to be taking that day off. I will not be streaming on Monday, just so you all know. I'll repeat it tomorrow as well. But I wanted you to know I like to take my birthday off when I can. All right, so there we go. I'm going to massage my back there for a little bit, and now we'll do our stretches. If you've been sitting for a long time, please stretch. It's good for you. And it feels good. Even if it also feels achy. Oh, boy. Yep, my birthday is the first day of summer. Best pagan holiday ever. This is why I like hot weather. I'm convinced. David's parents are going to be in town, so it won't be totally a day off. We'll probably be doing things. Might go into San Francisco. We'll see. But I know that I am getting. I think we got a reservation for a cool Japanese restaurant for that night. So, I'm excited. It's pretty much what I asked for my birthday is tasty food. I'm going to do my floor stretches, and I'll be right back, guys. Excellent. Didn't you always say that I reminded you of her anyway? Julie. So we have the same birthday. Proof that astrology might have a grain of something in it. I don't know. Maybe it's those summer babies. We're all trouble. Alrighty. Is that? Yeah, I think jury's out there. I think I will do a kind of a line highlight, just a little bit of highlight right along the top of the scabbard. It does have an edge. I've left it mostly dark, like right back here, just because it's up against the yellow. I don't want it too high, but we will bring it up a little bit. So here, leaving the green a little bit dark. Let me get out of this. Gotta get in focus, Anne. Oh, nice. Yeah, mouse guard's good. You're a Christmas baby and you're trouble? Well, my brother was 5 days before Christmas, and he was pretty troublesome also. Maybe it's solstice and equinoxes. Or who knows? Maybe it's just holidays. Or maybe you're just a special exception, trouble. So just putting in a little bit of highlight there along that edge. I don't want too much. Just a bit of a highlight along the top edge there, just to bring the light there. Then whatever I do for the runes, I do for the runes. And if you feel like your line highlight is just a little bit too evident or harsh, you can bring in your previous highlight to blend it a little bit by just grabbing a little bit on your brush and kind of brushing it over the top to bring that up a little bit more. Hey, Dogfather. All right. I think our green's good. Let's map in the freehand that I wanted to kind of get in. Mouse Guard is a graphic novel slash, I guess you'd call it a comic book, done by, we raid him all the time, dang it. Author's name, help, David. I can't remember. Mouse Guard author, help me. My brain just like short-circuited. He does streams, and you should go and... Thank you, David Peterson. Yes. And you should totally check out... He streams, guys. And he's always doing, like, commission work on his stream. It's fantastic. It's magic. You should just go watch him draw. He's fantastic. I always raid him on my personal... I used to raid him on Tuesdays a lot when we were doing streams on Tuesdays, because he's just really awesome. He's a fantastic guy. And his work is fantastic, and Mouse Guard is really cool. So, you should check it out. Especially when he does Victorian otters. He did a Victorian otter for a commission. I loved it. It was fantastic. I also found some other cool artists from his referrals. So, yeah, he's cool. David is cool. All right, what am I going to do? Oh, yeah, freehand. Da-da-da. I'm going to map it out in white, because I usually do. Yeah, he likes otters. He said that otters were difficult to draw. It's very hard to keep them from looking like bears, apparently. Because there's facial features, there's just specific facial features you have to accentuate or non-accentuate more. But the muzzle makes it look like a bear, if you're not careful. Things I have learned. So yeah, Mouse Guard. Check it out if you don't know about it. Especially if you like Redwall. It's different, but if you like that sort of story and book, I think that David writes a bit grittier in many, many ways. But it's still pretty cool if you like that sort of genre. Alright, so thinning my paint about 2:1 to start mapping in freehand. And what'll I use? I think I will use my big brush because it's pretty reliable these days on the tip. So what I kind of wanted to do was a flower design here because, again, like Wood Elf. And I had it in mind to do almost I think I'm going to start here. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 6 petals. So these little dots will mark the location where the petals start. It'll be more like 5 because I'm going to have a stem coming out of one side. Oh, cool. The marine mammals stream, yeah. So, more or less, you want these dots to be equidistant if they are petals. Then I'm going to make a little line going out from each in kind of a starburst pattern. Starting slowly with your freehand is of benefit when you are just trying it. So make a little kind of starburst parrot pattern there. There were a lot of stories. I mean, The Hobbit started it as that too. Oh yeah, it will be a very big change. He's more of a naturalistic, a lot less manga, not manga. But yeah, I'm not certain if Redwall started that way, but it wouldn't surprise me, given the style of the writing. Redwall was another one of those series, I think, that came out kind of despite itself because they weren't sure how to classify it. But I'm a fan. I still own a lot of the books. I think I own the first 8 or 10. Used to own more, but I had to downsize when I moved. So now I'm going to make these little kind of teardrop shapes. I'm going to kind of widen out my little line here. Make it more of a little diamond. It's a simple way to make a flower. And the smaller you make it, the more, the more delicate it will look. Up, that one got way off center. It means my stem has to actually come out over here. So I need to touch it up. And this is why you keep your greens mixed up while you do this, because then if you need to touch something up, you just take your wilderness green and you use it to kind of correct your white. And because your white is so thin, it's very easy to paint over. So I'm going to block out my original stem, and I'm going to put in another one coming off at a more direct upward angle. I've thinned my wilderness quite a bit, so it's going to take a couple layers to totally wipe out that initial line. There is a Redwall cookbook, but I do not believe that it started as a cookbook. Alright, so new stem. Little line there coming out. Now I have a choice here at the middle. I can just do the petals, or I could try to do a little dot in the middle, but I think I am going to just do the petals, guys. And the reason is that if I give this flower a center, it's going to be a very tiny little dot. And that means that it's going to be impossible to make that dot really read at any given color other than white. So I definitely want this flower to be a color accent. In fact, it's going to be purple, the violet, like up there. So I don't think I'm going to do a center to it. I don't know, Up and Adams. All right. Now we'll do a little bit of a stem. I wanted to have it come out and loop around. And a big circle. Since she is very graceful and flowing, I'm also using a pretty graceful and flowing design for the freehand. This again goes together with kind of imagining what design suits your model. Let's kind of get something down and then play with it. But yeah, there was a Redwall cookbook. I don't know if it's still in print, but you could probably find it on eBay if it's not. There was a choice between doing freehand on the yellow or freehand on the green, and I decided that it would be very distracting to put freehand all in the yellow, although I may do a little tiny bit on the back here because it needs something to bring it up. But this definitely, I wanted another violet, another touch of this blue violet, and so that's a perfect touch right there because otherwise there is no blue violet down here. That's the thought process behind the placement of this particular freehand. I'll also be doing my own stream today on my own channel, which is twitch.tv/paintingbig. It'll be this afternoon, although I think now we've got the terrain show during that time frame. So if you guys want to watch here on Reaper, by all means do. But I will also be doing my own thing. We'll probably still be working on Templar, as I am entrenched in trying to get that NMM finished. The Sky Earth. I haven't been working on it during the week in my own time because I'm working on the halfling in the evening. I'd like to have both pieces done for ReaperCon. Maybe even the Knoll bust after that. I don't know. I have the Knoll bust and the Lady Wolf Rider both on my plate after these guys are done. And technically I also have the Ignis Art Fairy primed, but she's not currently on my to-do shelf. One thing we could do... according to Amazon, the Redwall Cookbook is still a thing. Cool. So yeah, and then, of course, this is also a great time to plug my Patreon, which we mentioned earlier. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. And I do all sorts of cool color and tutorial stuff over there. So do go over and give it a look if you are interested. It is a lot more structured lessons than this stream, where we tend to talk about all sorts of stuff. When you're doing leaf designs, you have a lot of leeway when you're doing kind of a tapestry design like this. Just decide, like, on the main features of your leaves. Like this one, I'm just keeping very simple. And that way you can always turn them a little bit or make them narrower or a little wider to fit the space that you've got without kind of violating how they look. And we want to use these shapes to kind of fill in. Oh, my brush got a little dry. It needs more water in it. Yeah, that's correct, Quindy. Sorry, I got distracted. I don't want to pull viewers away from Reaper. That's the time I've done it in the past, so that's the time we continue to do it, and mine is Thursday only, so it would be good if you gave each of us some love, but you know, like I said, Reaper content is awesome, and so I don't blame you guys if you want to hang out on Reaper. But I also would love it if you came to visit me. Alright, so let's see here. Gotta get more leaves in here. That, and don't stress too much about getting your leaves as you get closer to the model, like the leg here, or further back in the behind the leg. You can switch it up a little bit. Like, don't worry about too much about getting all this freehand way back there. You mostly want the freehand where people can see it. And sometimes I'm gonna leave kind of a open shape, and sometimes I'm just gonna kind of make... Since I've established that leaves can be several shapes by that point, I'm just gonna keep going along that route. And I may fill them in, or I may not, but for right now I'm just like kind of making the design. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, it's earlier then. That's great. Thanks, Quindy. I thought it was a conflict. I'm glad to know that it's not. Okay, good. Yeah. Good. I was like it. That's the ideal world, is where I don't conflict with Reaper programming. I never want to take viewers away from Reaper. This is starting to look cool, though. So this is another example of how you can start with a very simple design, just a little pinwheel with a circle around it, and then it gets more and more complicated as you grow leaves off of your circle. And the biggest thing limiting your freehand ambitions is just brush control. So doing things like lining and practicing eyeballs and fine details is the way to kind of get, you know, I can also spin off another circle off of this. I think I'm gonna, is the way to get better, to develop the skills that will let you do freehand. So I decided to take a vine and take it off in a new direction up here. that will let me do leaves up here. And this is just blocking in, so obviously I can tweak it and, you know, adjust it. We can do a cute little leaf up here coming off of this. You can also just do little tendrils coming off when you need to fill an area, but your leaves aren't quite big enough. Or you can expand your leaves to make them a little bigger. You can expand and shrink your stem lines to make them fill the area a little better. I'm gonna make this leaf bigger. And it's okay if it's sketchy at this point, because you're really just trying to get like the space kind of filled with a design. Life scheduling is hard. Let's go shopping. So tomorrow I'm going to have to end the stream like right at 11. So I'm going to try to start it on time. But we have a lot of stuff to get done before David's parents get here, and we also have an appointment at 11:30. So we have to do that stuff. So yeah, we'll end right at 11 tomorrow. And again, once again, for people who just tuned in, I will be taking Monday off as it is my birthday. And I believe in birthdays. I don't care. When I'm 90, I'm still going to believe in birthdays. So I don't hold that the older you get, the less birthday prone you become. I think you're just cheating yourself out of a special day if you hold that belief. And I would never cheat myself out of a special day. The special days are special. Yeah, June has gotten filled up with stuff pretty quickly. So you can also make a little tiny leaf buds. If you're like, oh no, there's not enough room for a real leaf here. And if you do, it helps to put a few buds in a row so that kind of conveys that idea. Little buds. As long as it looks plant-like and organic. You can get away with it. You can also go very realistic if you have a specific plant you're trying to emulate, but many times plants will have areas where new growth is budding and old growth is has bigger leaves, so you can get away with a lot on that. It's not tomorrow, it's Monday. Monday, Twisted Oma. First day of summer. Oh, I see. Somebody else is tomorrow. Mo. Happy tomorrow birthday, Mo. Fellow June baby. I will be here tomorrow. Fun. Lots of little buds and leaflets. There's not a lot of room for leaflets down here, so definitely going with the buds. You want a little bit, though. And if the seamstress who did this wasn't, was kind of going extemporaneous, then you totally can get away with successions of buds and changing it up as you go. We're almost there. It's looking okay. So the danger in putting freehand down here is that it will draw the eye. So we will have to also put tight detail up top, which we'll accomplish with our NMM and also our faceted crystal. And we're also not going to leave this bright white. We're going to tone it down a lot and make most of it green. In fact, a lot of it will be like a green that's only a little bit lighter than the surrounding green so that it'll blend in more. That's why we're going over most of this with green. Most of these leaves will be green. They'll just be a lighter green. And maybe only a tiny bit lighter green. Hello, Hambone. Thank you for the tiny raid. We were just working out some freehand here and explaining that I'm going to knock it very much darker in green. This is just my pre-mapping it. I always pre-map in white so that I can get the design very crisp. And then I paint over it. For example, if I use my first highlight here, which was, if you'll recall, Wilderness Green and Alchemical Green, and I start painting that over these leaves, I'm going to make that design retreat a little bit. And if you even put Wilderness over this lighter color, especially if it's thinned, you can really knock these designs back so that they're a lot more subtle. But the fact that you started with white means that you can still get these crisp edges. That's why you start with white. Then you glaze, kind of really paint thinned color over it. And you can do that in little steps. Like, I can start taking this just a little bit green, and then I can make it darker and darker as I work with it. But do you see how that starts to fade in now? You also want to take note of where things are darker because they're in a fold, like up top here. And make sure to use your darker green up there to make sure that this detail is just a little bit darker. It's still there because we have white underpainting under it. But we're taking it a little darker at the top because of the folds. Likewise, anything that disappears into the back here. But notice how that minimizes the freehand. And the only thing we won't do in that fading in green color is going to be the little flower. So it helps add visual interest down here, but by making it green and the background being green and taking it down to the point where you can just see it, you can see a suggestion of it, and then when you look closer, you can really see it. By doing it that way, we are making it not quite as distracting to the eyes so that you can first look up at here at this all this tight detail. And then look down at that. That's the, Oh yeah. I also have been painting almost 4 decades. Almost. Although I would say that I don't really count all that time because I really started working on my painting during and post-college. So I can count from when I started painting. I painted my first miniature 4 decades, but as far as actually trying to get better, it's more like 3. Or 2.5. 2.5. Let's call it that. Right. Well, because you're blending it in. You're making it camouflaged. That's why doing freehand with underpainting is just so powerful. As you can really, you can keep the crispness where you want it, and you can still take it down as far as the contrast of the surrounding area goes, just by using glazes and painting thin layers over it. Very much can target it to what you're doing. But anyway, just so you guys can see where I'm going with this. Yeah, and it's still, you can still see it, but it's just not as stark, right? Whereas if I keep it white, then you're looking at the hair and the white down here, but I won't keep it white. I'll take it down. So then the hair still stays the lightest thing on the model. And then your eye will go down to that still because it has detail, but it'll move around the model a lot better. Yeah, for me, I mean, years off here and there for sure, Grand Oracle. But mostly I just don't count. I don't count my early futzing around as much as when I really started trying to get better, because concentrated effort makes a big difference. And I would say that my concentrated effort really started like for well and good when I decided to enter my first national painting competition. So that would have been in when I went to Golden Demons in 2001 to look at people's stuff to get an idea of what I needed to do, needed to learn what level I needed to hit. So yeah, so I'm not quite at the 3-decade mark yet. Got a little more time. I was still like improving and getting a little better before that, but it was really when I decided to paint for competition that I focused on really learning and developing. Before I was just painting for games, and it was cool and all, but I did want my stuff to look better, so deciding to paint for competition was what I decided would make me a better painter. I also was meeting a lot of people who were fantastic painters online, and I had started selling my work, so the incentive for me to get better so that I got higher prices was pretty high. Alrighty. I think we'll call it there. It's 1/4 after, so we've done a little more than our hour and a half. So tomorrow, guys, we're going to be on as usual, but I'll be ending promptly at 11 so that we can get to our appointment. And then on Monday I will be off because of my birthday, and I'll remind you guys of that tomorrow again. So thank you very much. What we did today is we talked about the importance of, like, you know, building highlights. We talked about figuring out what color you have on a grayscale, relatively speaking, and then planning your highlights so that they're, you know, 1.5 to 2 steps away as you go up on the scale. We talked about mixing a little bit of your previous color into your next highlight to make them harmonize a little bit better and blend together a little bit more when you're trying to make blends. And we talked a little bit about color composition here and there. We talked about how to make colors that are very similar on the light and dark, like kind of move apart by putting lining and a highlight in there to separate them. And we also talked a little bit about building a freehand design with plant stuff, for all intents and purposes, a tapestry design, starting with just your little flower shape in the middle and then building out from that. So thank you all very much. I hope you learned a lot on this stream. Lysette thanks you for your attention. And yeah, who are we going to raid today, Reaper? Play in the mud. All right. I hope you guys enjoy it. I will see you on my own personal Twitch channel, maybe around 4 p.m. Central Time. And have a great day, everybody. I'll see you later. Bye.